It's just already dealing with the question of why does this version need to exist exactly?
Today, we are going to be reviewing 10 movie posters that have come out this year from worst to best. Now, movie posters today, they're not great, not bad, they're just unforgettable, let's be honest. Once you see them, you've forgotten about them 5 seconds later. Now, what I'm going to be looking at today are 10 movie posters that have come out this year. I'm going to be reviewing them based on the composition, colour and typography, whether they do the job at selling the film. Basically, I'm not going to be reviewing the films themselves, just whether the poster does a good job at kind of being memorable. So let's get into it. Okay, first up, we are reviewing the new Scary Movie poster. Now, big fan of the films, but we're not reviewing the films. So, this new Scary Movie poster, it arranges the cast as a collection of kind of floating heads across what essentially feels like a display. Now, honestly, this may be the most disappointing poster in this list. Not necessarily because it's badly assembled, but just everything is clear. The cast is visible, the title is readable, you immediately understand that this is kind of a broad ensemble comedy cast. But it's Scary Movie. This franchise is built around parodying recognizable horror imagery. And that kind of gives the designers almost unlimited potential. They could have just mocked the current wave of elevated movie posters. They could have parodied like the endless kind of ghost face close-ups, disturbing family portraits, ominous red lighting, or serious kind of the A24 kind of minimalism posters. But instead we just get like a cast collage. And the composition, it communicates who's in the film, which is great, but that's not why the film exists. There's no strong visual joke, there's no image that becomes funnier once you understand the reference. It kind of feels like promotional key art for a reunion special than a like theatrical comedy poster. And that is the biggest missed opportunity here. A comedy poster, it doesn't need to look beautiful, but it needs to make a promise to you. The promise that it's going to give you familiar faces here, but it's not necessarily a funny idea. So I'm giving this movie poster about a 4 out of 10. It functions, but for a parody franchise, it just doesn't do enough. Right, next we have Spider-Man, A Brand New Day. Now it features Peter wearing, I guess, like a winter jacket with the Spider-Man suit visible underneath. I actually like the basic idea more than I like the final poster. It's showing Peter dressed as an ordinary person with this superhero identity still physically present underneath. It kind of fits the concept of the character trying to rebuild his life, and I love that idea. There's a human story kind of embedded in this costume choice. The problem is that visually, it feels closer to a character announcement or kind of streaming series key art, I guess, if that makes sense, than the main poster for a major Spider-Man film. And this is like the 4th Spider-Man film in the entry. It just needs to do a lot more. To me, there is just no visual tension here. The jacket tells us something about the character, I guess, but the composition does not really create any questions. It doesn't communicate a threat, the scale of the world, or even like a new kind of entry within to this universe. Then the tagline is kind of doing more of the storytelling than what the actual artwork is doing. Here's my slight contrarian take. Not every superhero poster needs explosions. It doesn't need action. It doesn't need villains everywhere or a dozen floating heads. But stripping everything away only works when the central image becomes iconic, which I guess you can kind of argue here, but the image feels pleasant rather than iconic. It needs to do a lot more. It is polished, but it lacks just that one unforgettable graphic decision. So for me, Spider-Man Brand New Day, it's 5.5 out of 10. Now there is a good character idea here, but it still feels like the campaign is warming up rather than making a definitive statement, which I feel that it has to be for a superhero film. Right, next up we have Masters of the Universe. This is kind of a large ensemble poster with He-Man. He's central. The sword acting as kind of this vertical anchor, and the supporting heroes and villains are arranged around him. It's nothing spectacular, but the poster, it clearly understands the assignment in kind of one respect. It needs to convince people that the world is big. It is colourful, theatrical, fantastical, and completely unashamed of the source material, which is great. That alone gives it more personality than a lot of modern movie poster franchises. And He-Man, of course, is the most dominant position. He's the main actor, the main character. The sword provides a clear, symbolic kind of center, which kind of holds the whole composition together. The surrounding characters create that kind of breath around it to suggest kind of this much larger mythology kind of world. But it also runs kind of directly into that classic ensemble poster problem. Once everyone needs to be included, composition is just crowd management, just playing hierarchy, just trying to work out who deserves more of the attention. And with that comes the issue of where your eyes are just darting around the whole composition. There's no difference between the movement and the hierarchy. Now, there is plenty to look at, which is great in some respects, but it isn't necessarily a clean visual journey through it. Now, my kind of contrarian take again on this is, does busy necessarily mean bad? I think in this case, not so much. Some worlds, they should feel excessive. They should be this kind of overwhelming joy and action that's just going to be thrown into your face when you go and see the film. But Masters of the Universe, it shouldn't be marketed as this quiet psychological drama, because it's not. The problem is not that it contains too much. The problem is that every few elements are allowed to become mysterious. It shows us the kind of whole toy box immediately. There's no kind of surprises there. It communicates scale and nostalgia, I feel, extremely well. As a kid kind of growing up in the 90s playing with these action figures, it kind of excites that nostalgia feeling within me. But it doesn't create a lot of intrigue for me to go and see the film, to go on this mysterious journey. I'll see it for the spectacle, but it doesn't entice me in as much as what I want it to. So for this, I'm going to give it 6.5 out of 10. It's energetic, recognizable, and faithful, but it's more of a promotional collage to show off the actors and the characters than a genuinely great poster concept. Next up, we have the live-action Moana poster. Now, in this poster, Moana is kind of positioned within this huge oceanic wave image that's kind of holding the whole composition together, with the wave becoming this kind of dominant visual device, which I love. The immediate strength is clear in this. You kind of know the film, you know the world, you understand the scale of it. And the water, it gives it the composition movement without requiring the poster to become too chaotic, which again, I love. Now, the blue palette is obviously on brand, but the image also benefits from the contrast between the huge environmental force and the comparatively small kind of human figure that she is against this wave, and overall it's kind of symbolic of the whole world. Now, to me, this communicates Moana's relationship with the ocean visually, rather than just kind of showing her looking heroic, which I feel could have easily been done, but they chose to go this route, which I love. The limitation is, I feel, that the poster is kind of selling familiarity more than reinvention. It's selling you the idea of the film that you love from the animated version to come and see this live action version, which is kind of where I feel that it falls apart. Right, now to me, this communicates Moana's relationship to the ocean visually, rather than just kind of showing her in a generic kind of heroic pose, which I love. Right, the limitation is that the poster is, to me, it's selling familiarity rather than reinvention. It is beautiful, but the live action remake is just already dealing with the question of, why does this version need to exist exactly? And visually, the poster, it doesn't fully answer that. It tells us that the ocean is going to look visually impressive. You're going to be treated to a CGI feast. It's going to be an incredible journey, but it doesn't give us that visual kind of perspective that feels radically different from the animated film. If you've seen the animated film, why would you want to come and see the live action film? Just to see it in live action. It's not offering anything new, which I feel that's the job of the movie poster. It needs to convince you to come and see it. Now, this may be strategically intentional, but I feel Disney, it doesn't want to frighten people away from seeing the live action Moana and kind of making her unrecognizable. But being safe and memorable, they're rarely the same thing. It needs to be taking risks. So for this, I'm going to score it 7 out of 10. It is elegant, controlled and effective, but it's still relying heavily on the strength of imagery that the audience already knows, unfortunately. Okay, so now we have the Odyssey. Now this poster places Odysseus in kind of a battle-ready stance with the Trojan horse looming through ash and smoke behind him. It looks epic. And it kind of immediately has this scale that the film is trying to communicate to you. The figure is comparatively small against the environment, which also helps. It makes the world feel kind of dangerous and mythic. Great, I love it. The smoke and ash create that kind of tense texture, or the Trojan horse kind of gives this poster this kind of single recognizable symbol around which like the entire composition can operate. It becomes iconic. You kind of know what kind of era this film is taking place in. Great, it's important. The poster, it doesn't need to introduce every member of the cast because the Trojan horse is already kind of doing this enormous amount of storytelling in and of itself. It kind of communicates the history, deception, the war, and the consequences that kind of all came about that in one shape. The restraint is also refreshing because I feel like it would have been easy and safe for them to just put all the famous heads of the cast around Matt Damon and just called it a day, but I appreciate them taking a different approach to this and being a bit mysterious and kind of enticing me into this world. So it's selling me that journey and scale, which again, completely approve of. My criticism comes is that it still operates within a familiar kind of prestige epic language, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's the typical lone warrior, monumental large object, smoke, kind of desaturated dangers and colors. It looks expensive, but it doesn't completely escape the visual language of other historical kind of action films and even like video game key art. And I also feel that Christopher Nolan's name is arguably kind of creating as much intrigue as the design, because you know you're going to be coming on this mysterious, epic, intriguing journey. As a promise of scale, danger and physical filmmaking, I guess it kind of works. So I'd say the Odyssey, it gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's powerfully atmospheric and there's an excellent use of hierarchy. Even if the concept itself is not especially revolutionary, it does a solid job. So it's a solid 7.5 out of 10. And next up we have Supergirl. This is the graffiti style poster with Kara in the brown coat and sunglasses, accompanied by the line "Truth, Justice, whatever." Now, this is one of the more divisive posters on this list, and I think that is partly why it works. The campaign is kind of very deliberately positioning Kara as the opposite of polished, inspirational Superman imagery. It's rough graffiti, casual clothing, it's got attitude, the altered visual language around that familiar shield icon. It tells us instantly that this isn't just a Superman with a different actor. This is a strong character positioning. The poster is selling personality before spectacle. And I would rather a campaign take a clear tonal risk than kind of delivering another perfectly respectable superhero against a moody, cloudy sky. Now, with that said, there is a fine line between attitude and trying too hard to look like you have attitude. I mean, truth, justice, whatever is memorable, but also feels kind of engineered to become a social media caption. Like the headphones, the coat, the sunglasses, and graffiti, all pushing the same rebellious, cliche direction. There isn't much subtlety, but perhaps maybe that would be the wrong choice for this. This poster has a certain point of view that is becoming surprisingly rare. It doesn't just tell us what Supergirl looks like, It tells us how the film wants us to feel about her. So for this, I'd say it's a solid 8 out of 10. It's a little forced, maybe, but it's confident, distinctive, significantly more kind of memorable than other movie posters, which is why I love it. Okay, next up we have Minions and Monsters. Now this poster, it shows a minion kind of sitting in this red, strange goo substance while multiple eyes are surrounding him. And this is a very good example of a poster kind of understanding that one strong visual joke that can do more than, say, 20 characters featured within the poster. The central kind of yellow minion instantly separates from the red background environment. The eyes kind of create this sense of threat, but because the character is a minion, the danger kind of becomes funny rather than genuinely disturbing. It kind of communicates the premise through contrast. A familiar kind of comic character that is the minion has entered this kind of monster world, I guess. The negative space around it and kind of restricting the kind of palette also helps it kind of stand out from the usual bright blue animated family kids poster. It is still colourful, but it isn't visually screaming in every direction. It's controlled enough. The design trusts the audience kind of understands the humour and the joke within it. And I kind of also like the way that the kind of title isn't required to explain everything. You could remove most of the copy and still kind of understand the broad promise of it. Now my kind of contrarian take on this is that family posters are often better at concept than adult blockbuster action posters. They have to communicate to children quite quickly, so they can't just hide behind this prestige lightning and famous faces, because the kids aren't going to care about that. They have to communicate quickly. Now this one has a strong silhouette and composition, the clean kind of color relationship and clear comic kind of threat of the eyes looming watching. So for that, I'm going to give it 8.25 out of 10. It's simple, funny, far more controlled than it needed to be, and I quite like it. Okay, next up we have Toy Story 5. And as we can see with this, we have the kind of main character toys looking or reflected inside the screen of this kind of frog-shaped iPad kind of thing. This is probably the kind of clearest high concept poster in the entire selection I'll put in this video. The film's central tension, traditional toys versus digital modern toys like iPads, it's communicated in one image. Now that is what a good commercial poster design should do. It doesn't merely show the cast, it kind of visualizes the conflict that's going to happen within the film. It creates this tension. The frog device becomes a frame and an antagonist at the same time. Woody, Buzz and Jessie, they kind of appear trapped in this, observed or displaced by this new technology. And the silhouettes within the foreground just help create this visual viewpoint, like almost making us a part of the crowd watching them through the screen and almost putting us inside their shoes. It kind of gives the composition more depth while also reinforcing the theme of toys being turned into content, which is a bit meta and deep, I feel. Kind of the blue, misty lighting, it kind of feels cold and technological, which is, I feel, a smart contrast against the kind of warm, traditional, associated Toy Story posters. My only criticism of this is that the facial kind of reactions, they're doing quite a lot. Everyone looks concerned, which makes the emotion extremely clear, perhaps maybe a little bit too clear, but it is a very minor complaint. The poster communicates the brand, characters, the conflict, the tone without becoming another generic ensemble composition. So for me, Toy Story gets 8.5 out of 10. It is a commercial design doing exactly what commercial design should do, simplifying the entire selling point into one reliable image. And I love it. And next up, we have the Mandalorian and Grogu movie poster. Now this is the illustrated orange and yellow poster, and it's got the deliberate kind of retro adventure movie poster quality that you'd see with the old Star Wars, Indiana Jones films. It's got that sense of myth to it, which I love. It doesn't look like a collection of publicity, still professional photos that have just been blended together in Photoshop. It feels intentionally created in every aspect. The painterly kind of treatment to it, it just unifies it all completely. The characters, vehicles, explosions, environments, into all one visual language, I feel was a major advantage to illustration. You could include a lot without every element feeling like it came from a different photo shoot. Now the orange color palette, it gives the poster energy and warmth, while the green title work contrasts beautifully with the whole poster design. And then Mandu and Grogu themselves, they dominate the hierarchy, but with the supporting characters and imagery, it kind of establishes the scale without competing too heavily with them. It helps draw you in. It's busy, but it's intentionally busy. It kind of recalls those kind of old adventure films, TV shows that use the kind of classic illustrated film campaigns, and it has that tactical kind of side of Star Wars that helped make the original films feel mythic, and there's outer world kind of adventure that you're going to go on. Now the one little bit of criticism that I have, which isn't major, is that the title treatment occupies kind of huge amount of space, and some of the lower supporting details will disappear at thumbnail size. That's a very minor criticism, but the poster, it sells the event. More importantly, it kind of makes the move from streaming television to cinema feel meaningful. It does an incredible job. So for this, I'll give it a solid 9 out of 10. It's rich, energetic, and it's proof that illustrated campaigns still have an enormous advantage and impact when properly art directed. And then finally, we have Disclosure Day. This is a pale, almost clinical double exposure kind of poster centered around Emily Blunt's eye, with parts of her face kind of appearing through a blurred, almost alien or translucent kind of form, which I guess is the form of a bird by the looks of it. This is my favorite poster of the group, and the reason is pretty simple. It creates a question. It doesn't tell you exactly what you're looking at. The image is readable enough to pull you in, but incomplete enough to kind of remain unsettling. It's a difficult balance when it comes to creating these kind of movie posters, and I feel like they've done a superb job with it. The near white palette is also kind of a clever choice, as most kind of alien invasion campaigns immediately move towards black skies, blue beams, city destruction, and enormous spacecrafts. You know, this poster, it goes in the complete opposite direction. It makes the unknown feel sterile, intimate, and kind of almost spiritual in a way. The concentrated blue detail in her eye kind of provides that major focal point that a poster needs to kind of draw you in and stand out from everything else. So our attention is just directed instantly towards her eye. I feel like the thin typography works because the image already carries so much mystery. The design, it doesn't need a huge aggressive title, and the negative space around it gives the entire thing confidence to stand out amongst everything else. Now, this is my only contrarian take on this. Posters, they don't need to explain the film. Sometimes the best marketing decision is to withhold information from the audience, but withholding only works when the remaining image is strong enough to create an obsession rather than confusion. For me, it gets a 9.5 out of 10. It's original, restrained, and one of the few posters here that I would want to study even if I knew nothing about the film. So there you have it. Those are my rankings for modern day movie posters that have come out this year. And the biggest lesson to kind of take away from all 10 of these movie posters is that recognizable characters, they're not the same as a strong concept. The weakest posters mostly show who's in the film. The strongest posters show us what the film feels like. And that is the difference between key art that feels kind of a streaming tile and a poster you actually remember. Now, if you're an artist or designer and you want to know how commercial marketing materials like this attract attention and how to turn those skills into income, then I've written a 300+ page book that goes through everything. It's called The Profitable Artist. You can check that out in the link below. But now I kind of want your ranking. I want to hear what you have to say. Which poster did I score too highly? Which one did I completely disrespect? And what current poster should I critique next? Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.